Hi, True Avatars, and welcome to your Queer Video Game Podcast. This is episode 24, and I am your host, Zoe Wild. I'm a bisexual trans woman, and my pronouns are she, her. This week, I am once again joined by Ekamy. Ekamy is a pansexual woman whose pronouns are she, her. Welcome back, Ekamy. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, like having you on. I've been trying to coordinate it so I can get everyone on the show eventually, but
one day.
I'm slowly I'm collecting regulars, I'm collecting the Infinity Stones, and I want to get all of. Well, there's only 5 of us so far, but if we get a 6th person, we can get them all on the Infinity Stones.
That'd be so good.
So just some housekeeping. This week we have a bunch of headlines, including some from last week that I didn't get a chance to cover. We have an update on The Last of Us Part 3, the video game. A pretty big queer game is being given out free on PS Plus this week. Or this month, rather, and Activision is using AI to make fake game ads, and there's also some pretty big studio closures we're going to talk about, plus other headlines too, including the friggin' tariffs. So after the news, Ekamy and I are going to dive headfirst into the many queer game demos we played during Steam Next Fest. There were a lot of games, and we only got to sample a generous handful out of, I want to say that there were 60 games. It might have been 57 specifically, but it was close to 60 games that were on Steam Next Fest this year with the LGBTQ plus tag. So,
Yeah.
And then at the end, this is super exciting, or at least for me anyway. I don't know if anyone else is going to think this is super exciting. I'm excited. But, I've come up with a brand new segment we'll be adding to the end of every show going forward. Queer Game of the Week. So each week I'll ask my guest or guests to recommend a queer game to me and all my listeners at the end of each episode. That way we can always highlight queer games on a regular basis, and we get listeners playing more queer games. But before we jump into the news, which will be our first bit of segments, I have some quick favors to ask. If you like this podcast, please consider leaving a comment or review on your preferred podcast platform. I did see that we've gotten some more ratings, so asking people has seemed to work a little bit, so I will continue asking and reminding listeners. Yeah, I don't think I've seen any comments or reviews yet, but I did see some ratings, like I said, on Spotify, I think. It not only helps with visibility for the podcast, but it also helps me to know what you like and don't like about the podcast so I can improve it as I find my footing, like I said, like adding a new segment, Queer Game of the Week. Also, please consider following True Avatars, a queer video game podcast, wherever you do your doom scrolling. So we have Blue Sky, Instagram, Twitter accounts, and also Threads. At True Avatars, and you can also find the podcast on the official website, trueavatarspodcast.com. That's all one word, trueavatarspodcast.com. All right, that's the housekeeping out of the way. Ekamy, shall we jump into the news?
Let's go.
Okay, so we got a bunch of headlines. I've been skipping over weeks because last week it was just Pokemon stuff. So
good episode. I liked it.
Oh, thank you for listening.
Of course.
Okay, so the first headline is that there was a big interview with Neil Druckmann about The Last of Us Season 2. There's a whole bunch of tidbits in here. It's on Variety. I'll link it in the show notes. I recommend you go check it out. But the interesting bit of news here is that they're not gonna make The Last of Us Part 3 video game, unfortunately. I'm really sad about this, but I'll just read the relevant part from the interview here. Then there's the long whispered possibility of The Last of Us Part 3. Druckmann was quoted as saying, "I was waiting for this question," sighing when he brought up the prospect of the third game. I guess the only thing I would say is don't bet on there being more Last of Us. This could be it. So I was really hoping there'd be a third game with maybe Ellie could finally be the parent and she's got to help with a kid. Maybe there's an issue or basically reversing the roles, right? Yeah. They also could have done a game with Lev when he's grown up. They could do a game about Abby as she deals with the fallout of everything she's done. But I guess the story's done. So
yeah, and I think with season 2 coming out for the show, I mean, it's gonna just reignite a lot of interest in the series. People are probably gonna go, if they haven't played the games, maybe they'll go, more copies will be sold, maybe they'll buy more. I know for sure it's motivating me to actually play the second game pretty soon. So I mean, it's in a way I'm happy that they are that Druckmann has said, you know what, this is the story that we want to tell, and that's where we want to end it. That's admirable. As opposed to if they wanted to solely just write something for the sake of money, especially with what I assume will be success from season 2 and popularity and such. But yeah, I guess I I guess I don't have an immediate opinion, mostly on like I guess I'm a little sad maybe that the third game won't come out, but I also don't really know how the second game ends, so I guess I'll play it and find out.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, like I'm not going to spoil the end of the game, but like it's a world, like there's like lots of story possibilities, and if they didn't want to do part 3 necessarily, and obviously he kind of answers saying there's no more Last of Us games coming. He's like, don't bet there being more
Okay.
Last of Us. But I know people have memed this before, but I would really like to see a prequel game called The First of Us. And they don't have to call it that necessarily, but in the show they kind of do hint at how the outbreak happened. And I would love to see a game that is like showing where the story kind of started and like maybe the first people who were affected by it, and a much more populated world instead of like this barren like post-apocalyptic scenario where we're actually seeing the apocalypse happen in real time. I think that'd make for an interesting story, at least. I don't know about gameplay wise, how you expand the gameplay possibilities, because I think both games kind of play very similarly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
seems like it. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be really interesting. I'd be down for that. But I guess we'll see. I mean, maybe they'll come back to it after a number of years have passed. I mean, I think it was a while between that Uncharted game with the 2 female leads, which was awesome. It was like a little side game. But I was curious if they would do something like that. But hey, if he's basically saying that's it, then I mean, I guess we'll really just time will tell at that point.
Yeah, I think the fact that they canceled their Last of Us multiplayer game, and then now games take so long to develop that like Intergalactic, their new game, isn't coming out for a couple of years at least. Like it just takes so long to make games. I really think like it would just take too long to make a Last of Us part. Like we won't see it till the 2030s at this point if they're not making it already. So
yeah, makes sense.
Let's move on. Most of these headlines are kind of grim, unfortunately, but there's one really good piece. Obviously, I said there's a PS Plus game coming, but let's talk about this Trump tariff update. And there's been an update since this article came out, actually. But this comes from Video Games Chronicle. Trump tariffs threaten the future of physical video games, analyst warns. So again, this comes from Video Games Chronicle, and I'm just going to read from the article here to give us some context. U.S. President Donald Trump's newly imposed tariffs could make publishers decide to stop releasing physical games due to the increased cost of manufacturing, an analyst has suggested. After weeks of threats, Trump has now imposed 25% tariffs on goods that have been imported from Mexico and Canada, and 10% goods on China. The tariffs on Mexico and China will likely have a significant impact on the video game industry due to both regions playing a large part in the physical production of both physical video games and the consoles themselves. So Matt Piscatella on Twitter suggested that the increased cost to import physical goods from Mexico, which is where the vast majority of discs are produced, could see publishers move further away from physical games. The 20% tariff impacts on consoles from China, although I'm not sure why they're getting 20% when they say 10% early in the article, but the tariffs on China could also affect physical game manufacture and specifically consoles. It could like cause, basically, Piscatella noted, very small piece of all this, but it wouldn't surprise me to see physical games that would be subject to tariffs simply not get made, with publishers moving to an all digital strategy. So,
interesting.
Yeah. I'm a big physical video game collector, so this would suck. But before we talk about this, I'm just going to note that Trump did delay tariffs for one more month again, despite starting them a couple days ago. As of today, he has now delayed them to April 2nd.
Oh my goodness.
And I have like a myriad, like a plethora of thoughts on him flip-flopping on this. Like he changes his mind more than a girl changes clothes, to quote Katy Perry of all people. But
interesting. I hadn't heard that news. I was fully last I honestly had heard was that it started a few days ago. So that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
It will be a shame if that is like, if in a month it goes through and like these changes are implemented. I mean, like you, I really enjoy physical media. I would say I probably do buy more digital media primarily for the cost, which is a bit of a shame. Like, I mean, I like having like a physical disc copy of something. I usually will try to buy, like I'll aim to buy a physical copy of something if I really, really like it, or if I like have the money, basically. So it would be a real shame if that does deter just physical copies from being made. It is just like also for the sake of space too. I mean, like when you get a digital game, it usually takes up more space than a disc copy would, like on Switch, for example. But yeah, I guess I'm unsurprised in a way by Trump flip-flopping with like the choice, but yeah, I would like to hopefully see some better news come out of this than what we have here.
I don't want to be a doomer, but I don't think it's going to get much better in the US. I think
I don't think so either. I am also not optimistic. I just say it. I just say it aloud and hope I can be optimistic.
I mean, I do try to keep this podcast optimistic. So
yeah.
I guess the way I would spin this is that like, I collect digital games. First off, I've always like had the heart to collect physical media. I just like having a case on my shelf.
Yeah.
It's tactile. I know it's there. I know it will always be there. I don't have to store it digitally. But also a couple weeks ago, PlayStation Plus went down. Like not PlayStation Plus, I should say. PlayStation Network went down for a weekend.
Oh.
And a lot of games either could not be downloaded because if you didn't have them on your console already, you couldn't access the network to download a game you wanted to play.
Right.
But also a lot of games that needed to check to see if you either needed a network connection to play, even if it was single player, or if it needed to check to see if you own the game, like just a security check. A lot of games became unplayable.
Right.
Even if they were digital.
Mm-hmm.
So it just had me like, I like to collect for Switch, obviously, because the storage space is less and Nintendo games always just have nice collector value.
Mm-hmm.
But it's had me thinking about like, physical disc games. And I would really hate to see PlayStation has already, I think I saw the number is like 20% of digital purchasers on PlayStation are disc people. And the other 80% are digital.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's interesting because I mean we live in that kind of world where I mean we've seen that transition from physical media to more of a drive to digital media, and I mean you can say the same thing about like you invest in a streaming service, like you don't own that, you just subscribe to have access to it. So the minute that you lose that subscription, you don't have them anymore. Not to say that like if you buy digital games you don't have them, but like you were saying, if some of them are checking for like an internet connection or a connection to the PlayStation Network, for example, like that causes an issue for sure. And I don't know. I doubt that we'll be driving much to that will be going very much back to, hey, we're gonna really push for physical media just because digital streaming, digital like games are just more, I think more, people can access them a little bit easier, I think. But there is like still like a sizable like fan base who like the physical collector stuff. Most of the YouTubers that I watch will primarily go for physical media, unless it's like a game that they just want to stream for shits and giggles. But yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that I found interesting, and this applies to Blu-rays, but I hope it will apply to video games in the future, or maybe it already does, but they saw that the Blu-ray market, like just disc for movies anyway, just disc buying in general, shrank last year. But what they also, or maybe it was 2023 and the numbers only just came out now, but either way, the last numbers they have for whatever year they were analyzing said that like disc buying shrank, like it decreased significantly. However, the 4K Blu-ray market, which is like the most premium option you can buy for a movie, it stayed exactly the same in that chunk. So really? Like people still, let's say people bought 50 Blu-rays in a year, and 20 of those were 4Ks, 10 of those were DVDs or whatever. DVDs and Blu-rays went down, but like the number of 4Ks still, it's like people still bought. I'm trying to, like, if you imagine I'm so scattered today.
All good.
But basically, let's say I bought 50 Blu-rays in like 50 discs in general in 2023. And then in 2024, I bought 30, but each year I still bought 20 of those in 4K.
Yeah.
Right. So the number of 4Ks that I bought still stayed the same is basically what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So I'm hoping that maybe eventually, even though disc buying and physical games will decrease significantly. I'm hoping the collector market will still stay the same.
Yeah,
so at least the premium editions or like, the games that people really want will always be there because there'll be a niche, like people buying vinyl, for example.
Yeah. So. That's a good comparison for sure. Yeah, I hope so.
All right, let's move on to the next headline, which is that, and this is a quick one, but Xbox has officially delayed Fable to 2026. They said it's definitely worth the wait.
Cool. I mean, not cool. It's unfortunate they delayed it, but I imagine they're probably taking the time they need to work on it. I've played a Fable game a very long time ago. It might have been like Fable 2 or something like that, honestly. Maybe. I think it was Fable 2. I don't think it was the first Fable. But it's exciting that they're making a new one. Considering that it was like a pretty prolific game when it came out, for sure. But I guess we'll see how it goes. Like delaying another year doesn't seem like too much of a delay. But I mean, people who probably really like the Fable series are probably maybe a little more upset about it. But
yeah, I mean, I can understand people like just being impatient and wanting to play a game right away. But at the end of the day, once it releases, it'll be at a better state and it'll be more enjoyable and it'll be remembered more, hopefully. So
yeah, absolutely.
And just, I think I did read that Fable is a queer game series. There's either queer characters or queer character creation options, something like that. I didn't look too deeply into it. I just saw that it did have the queer tag somewhere, and I was like, we'll conclude this, whatever.
Yeah, I'll probably play it when it comes out. Yeah.
Yeah, I did play. I think I played the first one like for 5 minutes at a friend's house, and I just thought it was cool that if you did good things, you stayed human. If you did bad things, you like transformed.
Became like a demon. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. It was so different from like a lot of games that were out that time. That's why I mentioned prolific, because I would like, at least for me, I was like, wow, this is not like something I've seen in other games. So.
Yeah, I don't know if any other game has ever done that, and in fact, it probably like led to more choice-based storytelling in games later, because I think the first one probably came out like 20 years ago, long before like the Life is Strange's and the Quantic Dream games like all ever came out. So
cool.
Let's move on to the next headline. Warner Brothers is closing 3 game studios and canceling their Wonder Woman game.
Oh, that's a bummer.
It is, actually, because especially the implication here being that they're pretty much just going to focus on Harry Potter games. So this article from Video Games Chronicle reported on this, and then I guess later that day they got an update straight from Warner Brothers itself, so I'll just read that update from inside this article here. But Warner Brothers has confirmed the reported closures in a statement issued to Kotaku reporter Ethan Gach. We have had to make some very difficult decisions to structure our development studios and investments around building the best games possible with our key franchises, Harry Potter, Mortal Kombat, DC, and Game of Thrones, it said. After careful consideration, we are closing 3 of our development studios, Monolith Productions, not to be confused with Monolith Soft from Nintendo,
Indeed.
Player First Games, and Warner Brothers Games San Diego. So don't worry, like the Xenoblade games aren't going anywhere.
The minute they said it, I was like, I know it's not the same studio. If it was, I would cry.
There'll be no crying today. They said this is I can't speak. A strategic change in direction and not a reflection of these teams or the talent that consists within them. The development of Monolith's Wonder Woman video game will not move forward. Our hope was to give players and fans the highest quality experience possible for the iconic character. And unfortunately, this is no longer possible within our strategic priorities. We greatly admire the passion of the 3 teams and thank every employee, blah, 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 blah. Of course, we thank everyone, but, we just laid off.
But we just fired a ton of people. Yeah, really.
Yeah. I don't have too many thoughts on this other than the fact that like the implication here being like Warner Brothers is much more focused on like Hogwarts Legacy 2 over say like at least experimenting with proven franchises like Wonder Woman, for example.
Yeah. And I didn't even know that a Wonder Woman game was even in development. So, I mean, this was kind of just a sucker punch because I was like, oh, there was one, but now no longer.
I've seen, it is a shame. I've seen people talk about Wonder Woman is from the people that did Shadows of Mordor.
Oh, cool. I mean, that's a bummer because they seem like Shadows of Mordor seems like cool games, but
and the thing about those games too is they made a whole system. They patented this thing called the Nemesis system, where the NPCs and the enemies will remember who you are, and if you do things to them, they will respond in kind over time.
Cool.
So this was supposed to be their next game, which was going to use this Nemesis system, which no other studio can use.
Yeah,
and so. apparently this patent is, I think I read somewhere that it's like going to be a while before this patent is free for everyone to use, as patents normally go public domain. But it also means that like there won't be a single new game with the Nemesis system in it until then. So
that's a shame. Well, I mean, I'd be interested to see that system in place for whatever. I mean, actually no. So it remind me. So like they closed Monolith as a studio.
Yeah, so Monolith was making Wonder Woman, and Monolith was the company that made Shadows of Mordor originally.
Okay, and they have the patent for the Nemesis system?
That's correct.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. So, like, something will have to happen there, I suppose, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Warner Brothers can just, like, absorb the, like, if Warner Brothers has access to that patent to use it in other games.
Okay. I guess we'll see. I mean, if it's mentioned, like, I guess we'll see what might happen, but...
Yeah. Okay, so the next article is like our one really exciting one, and that's that PlayStation announced their next free games. I mean, when I say free games, it's obviously you pay for PS Plus and then they give out like monthly games. So they're technically not free. They're free with an asterisk, but if you have PlayStation Plus, they are giving out Dragon Age the Veilguard for free in March, Sonic Colors Ultimate, which is the remaster of the original Sonic Colors, and they're also giving out Turtles, the Cowabunga, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Cowabunga Collection.
Very fun. That's awesome. Yeah. 3 big, like, pretty sizable games. And, like, Veilguard is, like, correct me if I'm wrong, that game's not even a year old, right?
No, it came out in October, like late October last year.
Yeah, so I was like, wow. Like, I was just talking with my partner when the news broke, and he was like, yeah, Veilguard. I went, oh my God. Like, I mean, I'm really interested in playing it. That probably will be my first Dragon Age game. When we've probably already gotten them, but yeah, it's cool. I imagine I'll probably try Sonic Colors. I've played a couple Sonic games. Not many 3D Sonics, I would say. I've played more of the 2D stuff, but seems like it'd be a fun little experience. And yeah.
I think Colors is a hybrid game. I think there's 2D and 3D levels in it.
Oh, cool. I love that. Okay. Nice. And then the Turtles Cowabunga collection. So is that just like a collection of like arcade? Well, not just arcade, but like inclusive.
Yeah, I think it's all the old games that they remastered or like ported.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'd be interested to try those. I've played a TMNT arcade game at the pizza arcade place that I had. Yeah, so they had TMNT there.
Oh my God, I played it too. You're right, I played it too.
Yeah. So that's like the only TMNT game that I've played, but that seems like it'd be kind of fun. Like I feel like I'd probably even like stream those. Like they'd just be fun to just pull up and go on Twitch and stream with one day.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on everything you said. I'll start with Dragon Age the Veilguard. I think the big thing about Dragon Age the Veilguard being free is that, first off, more people are going to play a queer game.
Yes.
Especially casual people. And I say casuals, like not like filthy casuals, but people who don't really think about queerness in video games. The kind of people that were in that GLAAD survey that were just kind of like, I don't care if it's there. If it's there, great. If it's not, I don't care.
Right.
But now people are going to be exposed to this, and it's got like lots of pathways to be non-binary. I don't know if it has a pathway to be non-binary, but you can definitely be transgender in it, and it will reference that in the story. So at the very least, people are going to, and all the people I've seen talking about it are like, more people are waking up to the fact that like no one hates it because it's queer. Like that was part of the conversation initially when it came out, but it seems to me people are more like, it's good, but it's not a Dragon Age game.
Interesting.
So hopefully at least it gets more eyes on it. Hopefully it helps it do better. So the studio that makes it, oh my God, they also make Mass Effect. I can't blank on their name.
BioWare.
My
God, BioWare. Thank you. Yep.
So hopefully at least it helps BioWare stay kind of afloat, because I know that there were a bunch of layoffs recently at BioWare, and they significantly reduced the size of their studio. So
interesting. Yeah, should be a good time for these games.
Yeah, and I think, Sonic Colors Ultimate, obviously I would love to have Amy Lynn on to talk about this a little bit more. I'm sure she can clarify some things, but the game is very rainbow themed. Like, it's about colors. It doesn't have the pride flag colors. Like, it doesn't look like a pride flag, but like it evokes that emotion, and I know Sonic has a big queer community, so it's like a queer adjacent game.
Yeah.
IMO.
Nice.
And yeah, Turtles, I'm excited. I'm glad to see that it's there. I think this is one of the best months we've had for PlayStation Plus in a long time, but I do not like side-scrolling beat 'em ups, so I will not be playing it, but I'm happy for everyone who can now play this.
That's fair. Yeah. There's like there's a certain draw for that for those kind of games for me. But I know that like this happens every time. If I play a side-scroller beat 'em up, I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing so well. It's great. In the minute that I that I lose a life or I die or whatever, and then I have to restart, I'm like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah,
I don't want to restart. Yeah.
Okay, the next update is also super small, but I think it is relevant because Stardew Valley has a huge queer following here. Is that ConcernedApe announced that the Switch patch has, the tweet I'm citing here is not. It says it's coming out in a few hours, but I've since seen that it came out. But Switch patch for Stardew Valley 1.6.15.1, and I know that's that's like pretty wild how many numbers they go in there, but it's 1.6. But they've fixed like a lot of the issues that have been like introduced every time they've fixed another issue. It just kept snowballing, and it seems to me like this is more stable, but you can see the update here in the show notes. I'll link it, but they optimize performance. They fix a lot of bugs. Like it's like a list of pretty much the entire list says fixed, this, that, and the other thing. So that's there. I think 1.6 added a lot of content. So the fact that most of this content is now playable again should be pretty exciting for people because it's not a new game entirely, but it does add a lot of new stuff to it. So.
And they've added new Easter eggs, I see. So I don't know what those are, but I mean, glad to hear it. more content in Stardew is nice to see. Yeah,
I like that he's still updating this game and keeping people coming back to it for at least smaller bits of like bite-sized new content. So
yeah. And I mean, maybe just one day we'll hear something about Haunted Chocolatier, but we'll see.
I mean, he has been talking about it a bit and saying like, I'm still working on it, but I keep going back to Stardew. And I think it's him and like maybe a couple other people at this point that are working on his games.
Yeah.
So
fair enough. Yeah. Well, I mean, good to see the fixes, and yeah. Look, say I'll probably. I was actually just playing some Stardew again after maybe about a year of not playing it. I got on with some of my friends on not on Valentine's Day, but like a couple days after, because we wanted to do a Galentine's night. And we were going to go and like go over to one of our houses and like watch a rom-com movie and like order food and all that. But I was really sick at the time, and I think one of us was also like getting a cold, so we just decided, you know what, we're just all gonna go on Stardew and just start a co-op farm, and we just had a great time. And it was very funny because then they all learned my Stardew experience is always like, okay, great, I'm gonna help out for like the first couple days, and then once I'm able to get a fishing rod, I'm gonna be fishing for the rest of the game. I will get all the fish anybody needs.
I like to do the mining myself. That's my favorite thing.
Nice. Mining's fun. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. There are two more headlines here. One of them is absurd, and the other one is not bad news, but just like, I don't know, just an update on Sega. But let's go to this Activision one. This comes from Video Games Chronicle again. This is where I like to get my news that isn't Nintendo specific, as I'm sure people can tell at this point. Activision taps AI for sneak peek at possible Guitar Hero, Call of Duty, and Crash Bandicoot games. And I'm not advertising AI. I don't think AI is a good thing at all. I think AI generated art is absolute bullshit.
Oh yeah.
But they did this thing here where they started advertising games that don't exist.
Oh.
Like officially, like Activision was straight up like, there's this picture here, and in the article you can see for Guitar Hero Mobile. And it's an AI generated image with a logo pasted in for a game that does not exist. And so I'll just read from the article here because it sums it up better than I can kind of ramble on here. But Activision appears to be gauging interest in new Guitar Hero, Call of Duty, and Crash Bandicoot games using AI-generated promotional materials for non-existent titles. Adverts for Guitar Hero, Call of Duty, and Crash Bandicoot have recently been appearing on the company's social media platforms. Some of the ads were linked to, it seems these initial doubts were well-founded as some of the ads feature links to mocked-up app stores. When users then attempted to download the product, they're met with a message explaining the true nature of the ad. It reads, "Thank you for your interest. This isn't a real game, but could be someday. We'd love if you could answer this short survey, which could help inform the potential future of this game. Your feedback really matters to us." Now, I have a couple thoughts before we kind of get into it. First off, AI bad. AI bad. That's just like without a doubt.
Yeah.
But the second thing is like, if you're gonna advertise games that don't exist to gauge interest, why do you need to use AI to do that? Why don't you just ask people if they want a Guitar Hero mobile game? Like, why don't you just freaking ask people?
Yeah, that's already setting up to be like, hey, we're gonna basically like lightly gaslight you to be like, oh, look at this thing that exists and it has a name. It's a game. And then you go to download it and you're like, oh, actually, it's not actually a game. But do you want this? Because like maybe we could make it in the future. Like what? That's a weird marketing ploy. I don't know.
Yeah, it almost feels like false advertising, but
it is, yeah.
Like, why did you? I have so many problems with this. Like, it's just, it's so absurd. Like, why? Like, and also Activision is now owned by Xbox. Like, don't they have Microsoft money? Can't they pay one person to sit there and like draw up a mock-up?
Yeah. Like I mean, using AI in general is just like, they probably just sat around at the table and was like, we're like, hey, we need some marketing ideas. And they were like, well, we can just like throw in some of our logos and like put some stuff up, and then it costs us nothing to basically steal a bunch of people's arts and mold it into some art style and mold it into some weird style and then make it seem like it's a game. But then if people click on it, then they'll see that it's not a real game, and then they'll be like, oh, but I want this, and then it generates interest. It's clickbait. It really is. Like it doesn't feel good.
No, it doesn't. And but like, there's so many other ways to gauge interest on a possible game. Like,
oh yeah,
for all these companies that are super like secretive about the games that are in development and how long these games take to make, and like the process they go through as things change. So like, I get some of the secrecy, but like, if you're not going to be secretive about it, like, why not just like make a blog post or like or in an Xbox direct, like a developer direct, just say like, hey, we're doing a survey Visions or whoever, whichever company is developing Crash Bandicoot, and saying like, yeah, we're thinking about making a Crash game and we want to get your feedback. Because like, then there's people who are actually like the fans who are like begging for like a Banjo-Kazooie, for example.
Yeah.
Like, why don't they just say like, hey, like, what? There's just so many other ways to gauge fan interest that you don't have to. Like, anyway, I'm just gonna ramble about this forever. I just think it's
fully agree.
It's so bad.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if people want, if people really want that Banjo-Kazooie experience, and I mean, there isn't a new Banjo game coming, but they want it. I do know of a game that's coming out that's very Banjo-Kazooie and a mix of Paper Mario. Don't know if it's queer, but definitely Banjo vibes. And it's called Ruffy in the Riverside. It was so cute. I tried the demo pretty recently, and I had a blast playing it.
Ooh. That's really exciting. And also, I know Yooka-Laylee has been out for a while, but they are remastering Yooka-Laylee and fixing the controls, which will make it playable for me, hopefully.
That's good.
So
that's fair. Yeah,
and that was made by the devs who made Banjo-Kazooie initially.
Yeah. I heard the controls were a little funky, so actually that makes me happy that they're fixing that up a bit.
Yeah, I think they're waiting on the Switch 2 announcement to actually say when the release date is, because they've said it's coming to Nintendo. They did not say it's coming to Switch.
It sounds so ominous.
It does.
I love that.
So we have one more headline. Sega promises, this is also Video Games Chronicle, Sega promises fewer new games this year, but deeper investments in Sonic Atlas and Like a Dragon. So they're planning to release fewer new games. During its current business year, which ends on March 31st, the Japanese publisher has released more than 7 full titles, including Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, Metaphor ReFantagio, Sonic Time Shadow Generations, Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza. They don't actually list all the games here, but they list 4 of the big ones that I'm sure most people, if you're in the gaming space, you've definitely heard of these. So their next fiscal year, which runs April to March 2026, April 2025 to March 2026 specifically, they're planning Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, Shinobi Art of Vengeance, Project Century. And then this article also mentions legacy IP revivals for Virtua Fighter, Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Golden Axe, and Streets of Rage, but this would push the number of titles to be higher than the 7 they released in 2024. So I'm not sure that any of those games are actually planned to come out this year.
Okay, yeah, fair. Makes sense.
But I don't know. I think most of the games they have planned sound like fun games, and even though it's going to be less, it seems like it's unlikely there's going to be a Persona game this year. I think a lot of people are kind of waiting with bated breath for Persona 6, and even I think a Persona 4 remake was teased or hinted at or leaked recently. So
yes, I do recall that. I did really enjoy what I played of the Metaphor ReFantazio demo. I'm still actually not done it. It's a hefty demo. Granted, I haven't played a whole lot of it, but it's hours and hours of worth for sure of playtime. But yeah, I mean, I know that they're doing really well with their Like a Dragon games. They're really popular. Like the Pirate Yakuza game looks ridiculous and fun. Yeah, they're always going to invest time in Sonic, which is always kind of nice to hear. So yeah, I think It sounds like they're, just from the article anyway, it sounds like they're prioritizing quality versus quantity, which is, in my opinion, usually a pretty good thing, because then, I mean, if you make like a tons and tons of games in a year, and if they're not that good, like, it's not necessarily better just to have all those games as opposed to putting the time in for maybe a handful of them.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think I guess the biggest news here would be if this, obviously, also I should note, this does not confirm Persona. There's no Persona game coming this year. I just feel like there probably won't be. I mean, I think we're going to find out pretty soon. If there's a Persona game coming this year, we're either going to hear at Summer Games Fest with Xbox, or we're going to hear at the Switch 2 Direct. Yeah. I think the big thing, at least for Switch 2, for Sega, the two things that we're going to get for sure are going to be, there'll be a Metaphor ReFantagio port on Switch 2, this is confirmed or even leaked. I just feel like they're going to do it.
Fair enough, yeah.
And I feel like, Sonic Racing Crossworlds is coming to Switch 1. I think it'll be coming to Switch 2, and I think it's going to bomb because Mario Kart 9 will absolutely destroy anything in its path. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I also want to just go back to Project Century super quickly, which is a game that doesn't have a title yet, but it looks like a fighting game set in pre-World War II Hiroshima. That's not confirmed. That's my suspicion.
Okay.
And if that's true, I would really, really love to explore pre-World War II Hiroshima. I think that would be freaking awesome.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, well, let's take a short break, and after this musical interlude, we'll come back and talk about Steam Next Fest.
Sounds good.
Okay, we are back from our break, and we're going to talk about Steam Next Fest, which is... How many times a year does Steam Next Fest happen? Do you know, Ekamy?
I don't know off the top of my head. I know it's more than one. They might do it 2 or 3 times, I think.
Yeah, and it usually runs a week, 2 weeks?
A week, maybe? Usually, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Steam Next Fest is basically, they basically do a week-long event where you can download a bunch of demos for upcoming games, and obviously devs have to opt into this. They'll release a demo for their upcoming game, and you'll have a limited time to play these demos. Sometimes the demos will stay up afterwards, sometimes they won't. Mm-hmm. But yeah, basically a lot of devs come together to let you try their games. It's a good way to get playtesting going, to get bug fixes, to get player feedback, to gauge interest, to gather wish list numbers. Yeah, this year there were, I think I counted somewhere in the realm of 60 LGBTQ plus games on Steam, all these games that had that tag. Jury's still out on how some of them are LGBTQ plus, although I did look up a few here to see how they were queer. So would you like to, we're just going to list off a bunch of games and talk about what we played, basically. And there's some crossover in what we played. There's some not. I try to play different games from you, but I think there's one game that we both played. But yes. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Do you want to go back and forth? Maybe I do one and then you do one, or I could just list all of mine and we just go from there?
Yeah, no, let's go do one at a time, go back and forth. I do one, I do one, tit for tat kind of thing. Yeah.
That sounds good. Cool. So, I was really excited to go through, to go through all the games that I saw at Next Fest. I played a lot of demos. This is probably the Next Fest that I played the most demos. And I will say that in some cases, I didn't fully finish the demos because I was trying to just, for the sake of time, just play as much as I could. But I did finish all of the games that I played with the LGBTQ tag, so which is kind of nice. So the first game that I wanted to note, which was a really cool one, was called Truer Than You. It's a visual novel style game where there's and it's choice based, where you're playing as an individual who is a bit androgynous, maybe non-binary, I believe, though I don't believe they use the term non-binary. And you've moved to a new city, you got a new job, and the premise is that this kind of job is not you don't necessarily have a job title, but the implication of the job is that you have clients who request your service, you go to them and you play a character who will help in their situations. So for example, one of the clients that you get a call from is someone who's like, hey, I'd really like I'm going to this party at a cabin in the woods with some friends, and I've told them I think that I have this wonderful boyfriend, but I don't actually have them. Like, could you come play my boyfriend? And you go to the cabin and experience. You just kind of have dialogue with different characters. And another one is where the client is they're filmmakers who I believe are like, a lot of their films and content are like anti-capitalist, pro-environment kind of videos. So you go and you film a commercial with them, and you read off a script that they give you. It's also a bit of a romance dating sim as well. So like when you're meeting all these characters, you're just learning more about them. There's people with like a number of different pronouns, which is really cool. You can go in with interesting routes. I actually went. One of the routes I went with was one I didn't necessarily know what would happen with it, but I kind of wanted to just try it just to see what would happen. Was that when you go to the cabin, there's this person among the friend group who knows that you are the boyfriend of, like, quote unquote, of the young woman, and they kind of see that you're nervous, and they kind of flirt with you a little bit, and I was like, oh, okay, like, but they're also a bit of a jerk, so I'm like, I don't know if I should like you, but like, is this maybe hinting at, like, you know, like a polyamorous relationship? Like, that'd be interesting, but I wasn't sure what it would happen, so I went that route, and because they ask you out on a date, and you're like, yeah, sure, it's my day off. Why not? So you go with that strange jerk of a person on a date. You go get ice cream. They're still kind of a jerk. Like, I didn't really like them that much. But I did end up like kissing them, and more or less just because I wanted to see like how was the game going to handle that? Because was it going to be like hey, you were her boyfriend, like monogamy, right? Or was it going to be like, hey, like love can come in all different forms, but you should talk with your partners about this kind of stuff. The demo didn't go that deep, I would say, but I am really interested in how the game is going to be overall. I had a lot of fun with it. The art was really gorgeous, very colorful, super unique. Definitely something that I haven't, like, that style I haven't really seen for a lot of visual novels. So yeah, I'm not actually sure when it comes out, but I am really interested to see its development, and I definitely will be buying it.
Well, I'm looking on their website here for Transcenders Media. That's the name of the dev team, or the company. It doesn't look like there is any kind of release date yet. However, I am also looking here on their website, and it looks like, I'm not sure if they're non-binary, but they both have they/them pronouns. As both the CEO and the CTO of of Transcenders. That's so there's cool. Bobby A. Sand has they/them pronouns, and Pixie Johan.
Cool.
Johan, okay. I assume Johan Anderson. Mm-hmm. So, and they do use the terms queer on both their website and on the Steam page. So I think these people are definitely queer, because generally speaking, I don't hear queer said by a lot of non-queer people.
Yeah.
Unless it's an insult. So.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it was an interesting game. I have it in my wish list, so I'll see. I'll get in more news as it maybe when the release date come closer to being announced.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's soon, but obviously I hope the devs also take as much time as they need.
Yes.
Cool. If I jump in with one?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
So I played this game called Paper Trails, a scrapbooking story. And the Steam summary reads as follows, which will help summarize it better than I can. Is a 2D puzzle game about cozy scrapbooking as you follow a little girl's life, solve puzzles to create the correct spreads, and make choices that will influence Belle along her journey of growing up and reconnecting with her mother. So the closest thing I can compare this to is unpacking. Mm-hmm. Not only just in its queerness, but also in the fact that, like, you're kind of like moving through stages of someone's life, and you're getting the hints of that person's life through the things you're scrapbooking. So the first part of the game, it gives you 2 stages of Belle's life. It gives you age 3 and it gives you age 13. I'm not sure if there's stages in between that, although it did feel like a bit of a leap between age 3 to age 13. story-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But age 3, for example, and each age had like a vibe. It wasn't just like scrapbooking with different things. Like the music changed, the aesthetic changed a little bit, at least the color scheme. So at like age 3, there's like a music box kind of soundtrack. And then at age 13, there's like rock music playing.
Cool.
It's more rebellious sounding and looking.
Cool. Okay.
And every time there's a lot more story than unpacking. Unpacking was very like visual storytelling where like you're supposed to infer things as you like, oh, you're unpacking this thing and you're like, okay, so her teddy bear is in each thing, or, you know, okay, the picture she brought with her is no longer here in this one, in this at this age point. Whereas this game, as you hover over each thing you can put in the scrapbook, there's some dialogue that plays out. So it is giving you more concrete things, but also, unlike unpacking as well, there's more choice-based things. So depending on at age 3, something you do will determine what band she likes at age 13. And it did seem to pick this choice. I'm just trying to see here. Oh yeah, so at age 3, your mom will draw you a picture. So like there'll be like one of the things you can put in the scrapbook, and when you pick it, it prompts you, and mom says, do you want to pick a butterfly or do you want to pick a bat? And the first time I played through, I picked a bat. And so at age 13, the band she liked was called Flightless.
Oh, okay.
And this band had a mix of men and women in the band. And you could actually, like, it seemed to me she was much more interested in the woman lead singer of the band, implying that she was gay. Belle was gay. But then I noticed when I was trying to figure out how to progress, because I was having trouble getting the scrapbook to like acknowledge that I'd put everything in. It was a little buggy, but like it didn't detract from the experience too much. But so I went and looked up like a walkthrough to see if like anyone else had played the game. And when I was watching, I noticed that someone else had a different band. And I was like, well, how did they get a different band? And this band was called Justice, spelled like Just Us.
Okay.
And this band had all boys in it. Like it was a boy band.
Yeah.
And so in this timeline, if you pick and I figured out if you pick the butterfly, you get Justice. And if you pick the butterfly, you're basically picking like, are you interested in men or are you interested in women? And now obviously the whole game isn't out. I don't know if this character is just bisexual and she's like going through like quote unquote phases. She's like, oh, right now I'm like, you know, if anyone who's bisexual might know about the bicycle, where like 1 minute you're like really into dudes and the next minute you're really into chicks.
Yeah.
So maybe she, like, I'm not sure, but it did imply like you're kind of choosing like your attraction through, and it doesn't tell you that you're doing that. Like the butterfly doesn't tell you you're into boys. The bat doesn't tell you that you're into girls. It's just like, here's a choice, and then things play out differently. And then at age 13, you're also making a lot of different choices that'll probably affect other parts of the narrative. So, it's a very adorable art style. Belle is mixed race, and she comes from a mixed race family.
Nice.
The queerness is like kind of obvious from the start. Which is nice. It's wearing its heart on its sleeve, which I love. The devs are called Pixel Poxit. I originally thought it was Pocket. I misread it, but it's Pixel Poxit.
Okay.
I don't know, again, the pronouns on their page, there's a lot of they, thems, there's a lot of he, theys, and she, theys. And there's no mention of like sexuality or gender specific things. So I don't know if these people are queer or if they're just queer friendly with, unique-ish pronouns.
Right.
But it does seem to be a very queer-friendly game, at least. So.
Well, very cool. You sold me. I'm gonna see if some of these demos might also still be available.
This demo is still available.
Perfect. Okay. So definitely, I'm gonna check that out.
And there's no release date yet for it, but the demo is still around. Sorry, Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna check really quickly if Truer Than You's demo. Yes, so Truer Than You still has its demo up as well. So, you can also check that out if you like.
Yeah, I think I will, and I recommend any listeners that if the game here piques your interest or triggers your interest, I don't know why I use triggers your interest, but anyway, if it piques your interest, feel free to go check out these demos that are still available. We'll note where possible when the demos are still available. Ekamy, do you want to pick your next game?
Yes, I think I will go with probably Monster Prom 4. So if anyone has tuned in on probably my first episode of this podcast, I believe I mentioned Monster Prom a couple of times. I dearly love these games. They're very silly, they're fun to play with friends, and they're super queer friendly. Lots of different love interests you can go for. So Monster Prom 4 is called Monster Con. It's coming out in the second quarter of 2025. And the summary on Steam is as follows. So it says, can you find love at the nerdiest convention ever? MonsterCon goes back to the multiplayer dating sim formula. Go through absurd and funny situations as you find love among 6 sexy monsters. Who will you romance? The mimic who cosplays, the idol clown, or the eldritch cutie? And in brackets, it says there's also Liam, who's like one of my favorites. Liam is like a pretentious dick, but I love it. So yeah, so I actually like just played this demo today because the demo was still available, but I was like, oh, I really wanted to get around to playing it at Next Fest, but luckily it is still up, so you can still go and play it. And it was so much fun. I just did like a 1-player thing, but basically the style of the game is choice based, where you're at the Monster Con and you're hanging out with your friends, Liam included, and you get to pick different areas of the con to go to. You can go to the lobby, you can go to like the merch table, you can go to like just various areas, and depending on where you pick, usually like there's a like an RNG chance of what type of situation will come up. So, you go to the merch table and let's say you find, actually there was a really funny bit where you go to merch table and you're like, oh, you went and saw this really nice sweater and it came with a free tote bag. And then you went and found some prints and it also came with a free tote bag. Then you bought a tote bag, which was given to you in a free tote bag. Like, it's very silly humor like that. It's really funny. Also very horny. like I feel like with every Monster Prom game, the devs just get hornier and it's great. So the demo doesn't have like, it's kind of just a hey, let's test out, like when you go to the places, you're presented with situations, pick your choice, see what happens. Your stats will go up, maybe your stats will go down. In the full game, the goal is that you want to end up with the date. And each character of the 6 that you can romance is like more leaning towards a certain type of stat usually, or like 1 or 2 stats. So you want to make your choices based on the stats that they like, but you don't know what stats you'll get necessarily from the choices. Like the choices will have hints, but you don't know for sure. Because I wasn't going for anyone in the demo, like it's kind of just a, hey, try out all these choices and see what happens. I was just like having a fun time and just experiencing all these silly bits. There's one situation where I encountered where Liam has a merch table of his own. He's selling his yaoi fan art. And he draws like the most beautiful piece of yaoi fan art ever, and then he's like, what do I do with this? I can't sell it. It's art. Like it's too beautiful to sell. And there was an option to be like, oh, we need to hide this from the world. The world isn't ready for this beautiful naked man. And the other option was just eat the paper. So I ate the paper. It was very funny. But yes, I do know that these games have a lot of really cool like queer options. Like you can date, of the 6, they usually have various characters who have like different pronouns, she, he, they, them, like various kind of options there. And you yourself, it's not in the demo, but I assume they're going to continue the formula. The character you play as, you can also set your pronouns. You've been able to do it in the other games, so I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do it here. If you want to check out the developer, they're called Beautiful Glitch. I don't know what else they've done besides Monster Prom games, but they're all really fun. I would recommend it. It's a fun time. Oh, and the demo has replayability too, because I tested something where I did my run in the demo, finished the demo, had a great time. Then I closed the game, reopened it, and then I went to, the same places I went to, and it generated different situations. So the demo has, I don't know how many, but they have like an RNG of like a certain number of situations that pop up at these same locations. So you can play as many times as you want until the game comes out in the second quarter of this year.
I also see there's someone here named Zoe in the game.
Yes.
Makes me happy.
She is one of the romance options, I believe. Yes. Yeah, she's super cute. She's from Monster Prom 2, I believe, and that's the only Monster Prom game I haven't played. I've played 1 and 3.
Is it because you hate people named Zoe?
No. No, it's literally, so the funny thing was my friend Mochi and I, we played Monster Prom 1. We streamed it so much. Like we got the most that we could out of that game because we had so much fun with it. Played it for like a year, and then I bought, like, Mochi and I, like, the second game as well. But as soon as I bought the second game, I didn't realize that the third game, like, just came out. So we were like, oh, we gotta stream the third game. So we just totally skipped the second game. But one day we'll get to it.
At least you have it and you can play it when you want, which is what I tell myself about my backlog every day.
Fair. I also feel like these games would be really fun to play on Switch, like just as a little handheld thing too. So I don't know. I know Monster Prom 1 and 2, I believe, are definitely on Switch. Probably 3 as well, but
I'll look this up. Monster Prom Switch. Let's see.
I've definitely seen the first game on there. Because they have like the XXL edition and all that.
Oh yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
XXL triple pack.
Ooh. Oh, then that's probably all 3 games. That makes sense.
Oh, and the physical. Okay, the physical is really expensive. It looks like it's probably out of it's out of print. It's super rare.
It's probably limited. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it looks like Monster Prom, Camp, and Road Trip are all on Switch. I assume Road Trip is the third one.
That is the third one. Yeah. So the first 2 are dating sim games, and 4 is another dating sim game. The third one is a little bit dating sim, but it's more of a survival road trip kind of game, which was a departure, but still quite fun. Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds adorable, and I might have to play one of these games at some point.
They're so fun. Highly recommend.
Okay, do you want to talk about Toward Dawn since we both played it?
Sure, yeah. Actually, before I get into it, did you finish the demo? Because this is actually one that I wasn't able to finish.
I didn't finish either.
Okay,
Not
fair.
because I didn't want to, but because of everything that happened the last couple of weeks, I didn't have time to play these demos until like they were about to end.
Yeah,
the Steam Access. And I think this demo is still available, so I could go back and finish it.
Yes.
And I probably will. I got to the point where it introduces the card game. And while I love a good card game.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if you got that far, but as soon as I got to the card game, I was like, I have other stuff to play. I don't have time to learn a new mechanic. Because this game, it was great, but it kept throwing new mechanics at you. And I was like, okay, it's a lot to like remember, especially when I'm like in a rush to get through demos.
Right.
I was like, my brain doesn't have the space to like consume, like digest this information.
Yeah. So I also didn't have a lot of time. I don't think I got to the card mechanic. I basically got to the first time you're able to explore and start, like you get to use your abilities, level up and all that. But I'm
Did you get to the boss? You didn't get to the boss, right?
No, I didn't. No, yeah. Okay. But yeah, we can backtrack a bit and kind of give a little, maybe like a little summary of it. I will quickly grab the thing.
Well, I'll just start talking here while you're pulling things up. So the Steam summary for this game is as follows. It's an RPG. That's me talking. And then the summary is, inspired by Welsh mythology, experience a classic fantasy RPG adventure exploring the cycles of abuse. Customize your abilities, craft new equipment, and break your enemies in strategic turn-based combat. Yes. So this game is made by Devi Serene Studio, and one of the 2 devs is a trans woman, Georgina Markey.
Oh, very cool.
And she's making the game with her brother, James Markey. So
very cool.
The game doesn't seem to have a trans character in it, although the main character could be trans. It's not confirmed one way or the other. If they're their assigned gender at birth or not. But anyway.
Yeah. So sorry,
go ahead.
Sorry, thanks. I was just gonna jump in and kind of go into, I guess maybe just the beginning and give like what I recall from the beginning. So, it is, as Zoe mentioned, like it's kind of very inspired and steeped in Welsh mythology. And you're kind of playing as this young person who is there's been an attack with her that has like impacted her family. Hunters are attacking, and then the village is burning, and so she goes with another person to try.
And
to
she's
fight
an
them
incanter, like she's a magic user in this universe, right? They're all magic users.
They're all magic users.
They're all being hunted.
Mm-hmm. So she goes to fight against the hunters. You're able to defeat them, but the person you're with is not so lucky. And so as you're like kind of wandering away, you encounter a wolf individual, like kind of like an individual, who, I'm so sorry, I forgot their name. They had a really cool name. I really like their name.
So it's pronounced Blevin, but it's spelled like Blddyn.
Yes, I love that. That's so cool. He's there. Well, I'm trying to remember. Did they actually refer to Blevin as male? I can't actually remember.
I don't remember either.
Okay, but Blevin is kind of the person who like is with you for your journey and is trying to take you to a safer place. And you're kind of, and then it's a bit of an RPG, like you're fighting different characters and people as you're going through these woods. And yeah, the furthest that I got in the demo was to the point where you're exploring and you're learning how to like boost your spells, basically, of like you can like or learning to properly like do spells, because your character was a little bit like I think their family members were more adept in magic or like more trained, and the main character is not as much, but you were able to kind of remember like, oh right, this is what they did to cast the spell, okay, and then you're able to increase your abilities there. And also there's voice acting in this game, which I didn't expect, which was actually kind of cool.
Yeah, there was, but I don't know if it was just because it was a demo or because I played on Steam Deck or what, but there were times where there was voice acting. Like there'll be like the same dialogue scene going on and like every other line would be voiced. And sometimes like it wouldn't just be like one character was voiced and the others weren't. It was like kind of random. And I'm not sure if that was your experience as well.
From what I remember, the voice acted lines were for the main character and Blevin, I believe. And I guess, and also there were sometimes like, and I mean, I call them NPCs, but like their family members at the beginning, like they wish them well, to be like wish them protection and all that. But I recall that like it's not like all of Blevin's lines, for example, were voiced. It was a select number, which is, I believe, a choice. Like I've played games where they would say something. Usually it's like a JRPG. I find that happens most, where like they'll say the first line and it's not a cinematic, it's gameplay, but they would say the first line and then the rest of it would be text. Or they would say part of a line and the rest would be text. So I figured that was a choice in this game, but I
mean, there's definitely JRPG elements in this. Like it feels like a very classic 80s inspired, both like a US kind of RPG, but also like a JRPG.
Yeah.
So I do want to talk about the battle system.
Yeah. No, go for it. Yeah.
So I really like the battle system. At first I was overwhelmed, but that's just me with any new battle system in an RPG. But basically, I mean, it looks like any other, like not, I don't want to say it like, I don't want to reduce it down to like, but it looks like an RPG, like it's like a battle. But in this battle, you have spells and you have attack. Like the werewolf has attacks. I feel like they called him a werewolf at one point. But anyway, he is like you called him like a lichen, and I think that's pretty apt. But anyway, so when you're fighting enemies, the goal is to lower their HP enough until they break.
Yes.
And once they're broken, they basically have a second health bar, which then you can use other attacks that are specifically designed to deal more damage on a broken enemy. So you want to like strategize and save your like breaking attacks, the attacks that'll be more effective when they're broken, to use those then, but then use your like weaker attacks to whittle down their HP beforehand. And then you have like healing spells too. All the moves have cooldowns. So it really incentivizes you to change up your strategy. Then the thing that I liked, and I don't know if you got this far, is that you can like stack spells. You can combine them. So like if you want to like,
no, I missed that.
Do damage, but also like heal, you can do that. If you want to like just like unleash a really powerful attack. And then even after that, that's just like per character. So like you can like have Karis like stack it, like stack 2 abilities, like stack 2 heals and like really heal up your partner. But then there's a later on attack where you like kind of synergize with your partner. So Karis will deal like a shitload of damage on the enemy. And this happens in the boss battle, I think.
Okay.
At the start of the boss battle, they prompt you with this. And that's probably why you didn't get that. Like, that's why you don't know about this part. Because I think it was for the boss battle.
Oh, okay.
But when that happens, Blevin will like, they'll like have a bit of dialogue explaining how it goes. And then she'll deal a lot of damage. And then Blevin will jump in and like draw all the enemy attacks to him so she can deal all this damage. And then when she's on her cooldown. So
it's like an aggro for Blevin. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's cool. Yeah, no, I I think, and yeah, the demo is still available, so maybe I'll finish that because that sounds awesome.
I mean, you get to the boss battle, and I was like, this would be a good spot to end the demo because like it gives you like a taste of all the battle mechanics. You don't want to give people too much, but then it kept going, like the story kept going, and then it introduced a card game, and I was like, this is cool. I don't have time to learn this.
Yeah.
But I would like to because I was getting hooked into it. Like, really hooked.
Very cool. Nice.
So.
Yeah, and the pixel art is quite nice too. I really enjoy like really like super detailed pixel art, and like Bloodhound's sprite is like crazy good. But yeah, it was just a nice. I would say it was a nice little refresher amongst like the other demos that I played, because I didn't really play many RPGs, or I think any RPGs really, amongst all the demos that I played at Next Fest. So this was nice. Plus, I mean, like I love Welsh mythology, so I'm just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, no, I think it's really cool. They're exploring mythology that just generally doesn't get explored in any kind of like popular culture or media.
Yeah.
I do want to also highlight too, I liked the menus. The menus were really extensive. Like there were thorough explanations of mechanics in the menus. There were good, like detailed character bios. There was a pronunciation guide for character names, which is how I know it's pronounced Bloodin and why it's spelled Bloodin.
Right.
You mentioned the beautiful sprite art, but then my favorite part of this game is actually like a thematic element. So, and I think this is where like the transness of the game comes into play, because I don't know if there's going to be any trans characters necessarily, but there's this like idea of destigmatizing werewolves, for example. And again, I don't remember if they call them werewolves. I don't know if they change back to human or if they're just like humanoid wolves. But in the story's world, everyone assumes like Bloodin is scary. Like werewolves are scary and they're going to eat people and they're going to cause problems. But then like the first few interactions with Bloodin, like Karis is learning like, oh, he's not like what I thought werewolves were like. So this like destigmatization is like a big theme. And like, I feel like that's like something that a lot of trans people have to like kind of, I don't want to say push because it sounds very aggressive, but like it's something like a lot of queer people especially have to do to get people to realize like we're just human beings who like want the same things you do. Like we're not bad people. We're not evil. We're not like quote unquote grooming children. Right. So like it just felt very queer. It felt queer. This destigmatization felt very queer, even though it wasn't about a queer theme specifically. It just like, that's where the queerness was kind of starting to seep into the story. Which I really loved.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'm interested to see this game's development. I believe it's coming out in the second quarter of this year. So
that sounds correct. Yeah. I think I read that too.
Cool. Yeah.
Do you want to pick a new game?
Yeah. I'll go with this was a game that I played a little late in the Steam Next Fest because I actually think I didn't originally see it in the LGBTQ plus tag on like for the demos on Steam. But I actually was recommended it by a friend and I thought, you know what? Sure, I'll give it a try. And it's called Quality Dreams Reasonably Priced. It is also my favorite of all of the Steam Next Fest demos that I played. Just like a pleasant surprise. So I'll read the summary on Steam. So it goes, work as a body modification consultant in a dystopian future. Talk to clients, make recommendations, and decide how much to upsell them. Balance helping others with earning enough to save your sick rabbit. Make decisions and change lives. The developer is Zorky Studios, who is their description on every social media platform for them is just a 2-man dev team. And that's it. And I know that they're based in Canada because they say it in the demo. So this was a really, really cool demo. So it's a visual novel, choice based, as kind of the description, the summary implies. You play as, this, young person, Jean, whose pronouns are, any, so they, them, or any at all. And Jean just got hired on to this company that sells services for body modifications. It's a bit of a cyberpunk future, and you've just signed on. You learn that Jean is not necessarily in a great space, like financially. They're hoping that they can, earn a little bit more money, relatively soon, because their rabbit, whose name is, I had to remember it. It was so good. It was, Nibbles Dandelions. Its last name was Dandelions. So cute. So poor Nibbles has fallen very ill and needs an expensive surgery, which is $17,000.
Jesus, what?
Oh yeah. And so they have some money in their savings, but they wanna, in the time before the surgery, they wanna, try to save up money for the surgery for the rabbit. And it becomes a really interesting kind of a conflict, I guess, because there's two ways you could kind of play the game. Because when you start, your boss just says like, hey, let's run through a fake interview. I am a person who wants to get these tattoos that will go all over my body and will glow, and like it's a really trendy body mod lately. And then they're like, yeah, if you're talking to the client, like, be a little personable, ask them ask them a few things. If they ever seem unsure about the body modification, like ask them some additional questions, see if they're like, sure that it's right for them, or if they have any concerns about it. And it's all very like, what you would expect about going to a service of some kind that could also be like, a big thing in your life. It's body modification. And ultimately,
sorry, I just want to cut you off for a split second here. Let's just say that so far this sounds like trans surgery is the game.
Of what's, sorry,
like transgender surgery is the game.
Well,
like I'm reading over the Steam page and I'm like listening to what you're saying, and it's like choose between morals and your bottom line and impact the client's future as well as your own. Like this is loaded.
Yeah, I'm
very interested.
It's so good. Yeah, so when you go through the mock interview, then your boss says, okay, like that's great. So we want to make sure that we sell these sell these services to clients who are sure that we want them and we can get their money. And like they try to also be like, hey, we offer body mods at a lower price. Like that's why we're well known. They're good quality. Quality Jean is reasonably priced. That's where the title comes from. I think the name of the company is called like Envisage something. Like it's a bit of a bougie name, I think. But and that like Jean keeps mentioning that. It's very funny. But so that happens. Now your boss also says like, hey, remember, you're not anyone's therapist. So like, you don't need to like poke and prod people to like learn about them if they don't want to, and it can be a big burden if they want to unload, and like you may not have the capacity. So like it's this weird like, hey, like sell these like be capitalist, sell these really important things to people, but also like they're really important to these people, so like be friendly and personable. And so as you go through, as you encounter clients, you can then decide, like, when you learn more about them, you're like, okay, ultimately, in the end, you do decide if you recommend them the service or you don't. And in the demo, the first client you get, it's so wonderful. It's the first client you get is someone who is seeking a body modification for that's gender affirming care, because they don't feel like they are themselves as they are right now. And you learn about them. You learn they're a gardener. You learn that they like making tea, and it's really sweet and nice, and listening to them, and when they were like, they were a little bit. Like, you ask them about yourself, they're like, well, it depends what you want to know. Like, they were kind of like reserved, and I was like, that's fair. I mean, you don't want to tell me your life story. It's very personal to you, so I don't need to know that, right? So I ended up just being like, no, I think they definitely, they know what they want. It's in their budget. I will recommend it. And then I got the, funds, and it was great. I got the commission. And then the next client that we had was someone who is this young woman who's like, I want to get a modification to change my voice. She's like a bit of a rich young woman. She has a talk show that is really popular with people. She's very humble and very like, she's like, oh, I didn't know you know my show. That's really cool, and she's But she's like, yeah, I want to change my voice. And then you're like, well, why do you want to change your voice? And you kind of, I'm not going to spoil like her story necessarily, because once you get into it, like it's sad. But if you ask her more questions, like she's a little bit more open to answering. And in that one, I ended up like it was hard because I was like, oh, I need the money for my rabbit, but like I don't think I should recommend this to this young woman. Excuse me. And I ended up not recommending it, and I was just like, this is going to be the game. This is going to be the tough choices throughout the game.
Oh, so gatekeepy.
Yeah.
I'm so curious.
Yeah. It's so good. And like it's like ultimately like your choices will affect what happens in the future, right? So like obviously you'll get commission if you give them if you sell the product, but if you don't, sometimes that'll lead to a conversation that's more like wholesome, or like maybe you'll talk to that person later and they'll be like, thank you. Like an interesting thing that my friend and I discussed, because they played it before I did, was that they also went through the whole process of like talking with the young woman and learning all about everything. They made some slightly different changes like in choice than I did, but ultimately we both ended up saying, I don't think we should recommend this. And interestingly, in my game, she came back after a couple days, and like she basically said, thank you for your suggestion, I will take it into consideration. She came back and she ended up going through with the body modification for her voice, which was kind of sad because I was like, oh man, like I hope that something, came from it, but I mean, it's your choice ultimately, right? So like I hope that it's a good choice.
I'm glad that I know they're fictional characters, but it's nice to know that like despite whatever choice they're making, they have the freedom to choose despite the recommendation.
Yes. And the interesting part there is that my friend, who also made the same like, hey, I don't think I'd recommend it, she didn't come back in their game. So, and it was I think it was a very slight differentiation from what we chose. So like in terms of like picking lore and all, or picking like dialogue choices to learn about. And then all the time, like, you come back and you're like, oh, like, my poor little bunny rabbit who's, like, the sweetest thing ever. Like, you're just reminded, like, oh, like, and sometimes, like, your bunny will be, like, a little happy and, like, he'll eat some lettuce. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, because sometimes he doesn't use food as much. So, yeah, and that's probably the most I'll say for the story. The art is gorgeous. The music is nice. I was just floored. I really, really like this game. I believe it's coming out in the third quarter of 2025. And I am big. If I have the money, I'm gonna get it day one. I honestly think so. So. Well,
the demo's still available, so I'm going to go try it probably tonight because it sounds awesome.
It's real good. I hope you like it. Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in with another game.
Mm-hmm.
And this game does have the LGBTQ tag, although I didn't have time to like look up Witchbeam Games too much. But anyway, so Witchbeam Games, the team who made Unpacking, which we discussed earlier, they're making a new game that actually comes out April 17th. So very soon, just over a month, called Tempopo. Not Tampopo like the movie, but Tempopo like a tempo like music.
Oh.
So it's a rhythm game. If a rhythm game was mashed up with Captain Toad Treasure Tracker.
Oh.
So have you played Captain Toad Treasure Tracker or Mario 3D World with the Captain Toad levels?
I've played the Mario 3D World with the Captain Toad levels, yeah.
Okay, so for anyone who doesn't know about the Captain Toad game, is like it's this like 3D, like basically you can spin around this little 3D floating island in the sky and like make choices for where to send Captain Toad to solve like a puzzle in the environment. And it's like grid based, but it's still 3D. And so Tempopo is basically that, except it's kind of a rhythm game, although you're not really controlling the rhythm, but you're trying to like, your characters will move to the rhythm, but they'll make choices as they move from each grid. So it's kind of hard to explain, but basically the game starts off with like this girl who's trying to like, not compose, but oh my God, conduct music. She's trying to conduct music and she like messes up her conducting. And then all the flowers on the sky island that she's on disappear. Like they vanish. They fly off in a tornado in a gust of wind. And so you're sent to all these islands to gather the flowers. And your goal is to like move around these little floating islands. And you can like look around them in a 3D space like Captain Toad. But your goal is to like use the mechanics to send these little floating pink puffballs, kind of look like Kirby a little bit, to gather the flowers. And the first few puzzles are really simple. Like, okay, walk forward, and then you're basically choosing like, you'll choose like all these like things like, you'll give a bounce command, and you'll put the bounce command on that space. So when you activate the little puffballs to go move around the spaces, when they get to that space to jump up, they will jump, and it will affect where they go elsewhere in the level. Or you'll tell them to turn, or you'll tell them to jump off of this thing, or you'll tell them to break something. And you have a limited number of things. So like they'll give you like anywhere from like 1 to like 6 things to do. And there's like a whole bunch of different things they could give you. And you have to figure out where to put them on the level. And sometimes you'll have multiple pink puffballs. Like you won't just have one, like you'll have 4. And they interact with each other too. So you kind of have to like, and it gives you a lot of freedom to kind of like mess around, but like basically you got to figure out where everything goes so they can collect all the flowers without falling off the island or getting attacked by anything on the island. And then reach the end point of like this grid of like this basically board game. You like reach the end and then collect all the flowers. So, and every time you mess up, like the game is really good about like resetting it. Right. It'll be, you can either reset the whole level or just go back to where you had placed everything and move stuff around. I could never figure out how to actually like reverse a choice I had made. So I always ended up resetting and just remembering where I went. But yeah, basically it's like Captain Toad with music elements. It's really hard to explain, but it's really fun. And really, really fucking difficult. Like the first few levels, you're like, okay. And then it adds another mechanic and you're like, okay, this is getting confusing. And then it adds multiple. And then you've got to like get them to bounce off each other. So like there's a bounce mechanic and you can have it bounce boxes off to like fill in squares. Or they like the 2 characters will reach each other as they move around the space, and you have to get them to bounce off each other. And it's just like the last level where you're collecting like 4 flowers on multiple levels. And I was just like, I don't know. And I just had to keep experimenting till I figured out what the solution was. And sometimes I would just like randomly put something somewhere thinking like, I'll try this. And the next thing I knew, I solved the puzzle without knowing really what I did.
The algebraic equations are like visibly forming near your face and the look of confusion.
I was like that meme the whole time. But I really, really liked it. I'm excited. I was frustrating. I was like also with the time sensitive, like I was pressed for time. So I didn't have like a ton of time to figure it out, but I did finish the demo. And like, yeah, it was frustrating. Like I was like freaking out. And every time you mess up too, the girl in the game, who's black, by the way, which is really cool and inclusive. Nice. She like kind of like grumbles or groans in anger. And it's like the kind of sounds you would make when you mess up too. And I was just like, felt very relatable. And the music's always cute. Like the music is always different in each level. Like there'll be like ambient music as you're figuring things out. And then when you tell the little puffballs to start moving around the board, the music starts up and it's always different for each level. So, and cool. It seems like there's like multiple worlds and like you find more than 30 flowers in total in the first world, which is like, or the first set of levels, basically. Think like a Mario game. Anyway, yeah, it comes out April 17th and it's adorable. And I'm done talking now, so you can now say what you would like to say.
That sounds super cute. I'm gonna go wishlist that. That sounds delightful.
Yeah, I'm not sure what about it makes it queer, other than maybe the devs are queer themselves. And like, there's not too much queer in it, and it's very different from Unpacking, the way Unpacking was. Like, Unpacking was like very linear. I mean, this game is linear too, but like it's a very different game. Like, I mean, I guess it's not though, because Unpacking is still at its core still a puzzle game where you're trying to figure out where everything goes in the right place. So actually, I was about to say this is a very big departure from Unpacking, but fundamentally it's not, because it's still about finding where everything fits in the right place to advance things.
That's fair.
Like everything has its one place where it needs to go, and you need to figure out where that is. It's just a slightly different
like format. Yeah. That's cool.
So
actually, on that note too, I have one more game that I kind of wanted to give an honorable mention, but I have a similar comment about like what I'm not quite sure about, like the queerness of it, but it was in the LGBTQ plus tag, and I really enjoyed it. It's called A Pizza Delivery. The developer is Eric Osuna. And the summary on Steam is that A Pizza Delivery is a narrative exploration game with puzzle elements focused on connecting with people. Share pizza with charming characters to uncover their stories and your own. Drive and explore a strange, meditative world filled with secrets. It's a 3D point-and-click puzzle kind of game, a bit of a walking simulator as well, as you're just kind of traveling on your little motorbike with pizza. I will say the summary on the Steam page, I feel like it makes it, combined with the with the art, like with the really, like it's this gorgeous, like, you know, you're driving through these meadows, it's a blue sky, there's clouds. It makes it seem a little brighter than like how the demo probably was. The demo is very, like, visibly very dark. Maybe not the first area. The first area is a little colorful, but yeah, you're kind of like it's a very like you're playing as this character who's I think their name is just a letter. I think it might be B. And
yes, you're correct. It's B.
Thank you. Yeah. So you're going through, you're communicating with, like, presumably your boss on the, like, with these, like, payphones that you basically come across every now and again, and he tells you what to do. And it's like the game is sectioned up into different areas. So, like, in the first one, you start at an apartment building where you deliver the pizza, you leave, you're in this nice meadow, you use the payphone, and you keep going, and you drive to the next area. And the next area is kind of like a very dark city, like shadowy city. And you're kind of going through and picking up certain things. Like, it's very like point and click adventure elements in terms of kind of like a bit like Resident Evil. Like, you pick up things that will be useful for puzzles later.
Right.
And you go through. Yeah, it was really interesting. It was very, I feel like there with the dialogue and with what this character is experiencing, and also with, like, what's exactly going on. Like, I wasn't sure 100% of what necessarily was the through line of the story, like what was going on, but it definitely is like I feel like it feels like it's exploring, like it's like this, maybe this character, this pizza delivery person, is exploring their story, and you're kind of getting bits and pieces of, like, what happened with them. I don't know if it's specifically with them, but there is, like, little dialogue bits where, like, it kind of, it seemed to me that it was implying that it was their story. And then you're meeting other characters. I
actually see B's pronouns are her, by the way. She, her.
Oh, she, her? Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, sorry, just because I just noticed it confirms it here in the description.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. So yeah, she is going through, and I mean, she encounters some people to deliver, like, pizza to. I remember meeting at least one person in the shadowy city, and they talked, and it was kind of I don't quite remember the dialogue or the conversation necessarily, but it was around, like, they just kind of seemed like, hey, life's bleak, but, you know, hey, we're living, right? So I think it's kind of going to be a really, like, symbolic game, maybe looking at something from B's past, or just maybe learning from other characters. In the trailer itself, you can see, like, lots of other colorful characters, which I'm really interested to meet. But the game really just stood out to me. I was like, this is just really interesting. And I like these kind of 3D puzzle, 3D point and click adventure, or not point and click, but, like, 3D puzzle games that you walk around in. It reminds me a little bit of, like, games like Dreamfall and The Longest Journey and all that. Which are, well, I believe Dreamfall Chapters was more of a queer game, but just the whole, that style of game is what I mean. And I don't know specifically what queer elements will be in there. Like, it is, like, the LGBTQ plus tag is attached to this game, but I don't know if that's going to be related to B. Like, maybe she has, like, maybe she's like, you know, sapphic or a lesbian. I don't really know. Or maybe, like, there'll be characters who you'll meet, like NPCs characters who will be queer, and, like, that's who you deliver to. So I guess we'll see. But yeah, it just seemed like a super
I did look
game.
up the dev. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
I did look up the dev, and he seems to be teasing. He hasn't teased anything LGBTQ specific in the game, but someone did ask, like, a question about the game, and he's like, you're just going to have to play it to find out. So
okay,
if there are queer elements in the game and the tag isn't just there incorrectly, which I doubt it is, but I doubt it, yeah. I'm sure we're meant to find out as the game moves forward.
Yeah, so I've got it on my wish list. I think it'll be interesting to play. It's a very somber demo for sure, and I believe it's yes, it's still available. So if anybody wants to try it out for themselves, see how they like it, it is there.
I have my last game. Do you have any more games after this as well?
I think that's about it for me.
Okay, so we'll finish off with a quick one because it's very similar to Tempopo, but without the musical elements. It's called Couple Maker, and it's a Japanese game where it's a puzzle game where you have, like, a board. It's not 3D, but it's 2D, and you're on your board, you have two or pairs of people, right? You'll have people on blue squares and people on red squares, and each board might have like anywhere from 1 pair to 3 pairs of people, and your goal is to get the red squared people to the blue square people who stay on the side of the board. It's a couple, like your goal is like, there's a lot of flavor text for who the couples are, but basically your goal is to like get the lovers to meet, basically, getting across the board using various mechanics. It's got a very cute art style, and every person has a description with like their interest. It's like a dating sim puzzle game, where the dating sim elements aren't super important. They're just kind of there to like give the game flavor, like I said. I found it much more difficult than Tempopo. The solutions were a little more challenging. That said, though, the game is very queer because you can choose male-female couples. Like, you literally go into settings and you can make it male-female, male-male, or female-female. I didn't see an option to like randomize, but yeah, you can make it basically any gender of the binary, at least. So I set it to female-female, and then yeah, all the characters were girls. I did notice a few issues. I think the game is reusing, at least in the demo, a lot of descriptions for all the different characters. So there was an occasional time where the women were misgendered. Although that said, there are he, him lesbians, so like maybe that's not the intent. But yeah, I found the only thing I really didn't like about it, because I actually thought it was difficult, but there's while you're moving through the grid, you can tell characters to turn left, right, up, or down. But there's also like a turnaround feature. So, but it also works similar to the arrows. So I found it a little confusing to like as which direction everything went with the turnaround mechanics. And then the demo is actually very thorough. It's got 3 worlds out of like, I want to say 6 or 7. But it's very cute. It's very charming, I'll say. Yeah, and like I said, it lets you pick the sexuality of the characters you're trying to get to meet. So
very cool.
Let me just double check here if it's still available, the demo. I think it is, but I'd like to confirm. Couple Maker on Steam. Yes, the demo is still available. So
awesome. Yeah, I feel like a lot of the games that I feel like I was just lucky. Like a lot of the games that I downloaded demos for that I just didn't get around to, like the demos were still available too. So I mean, in that case, the devs just decided to leave it up, which is awesome. So yeah, more opportunity to play more games.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all for my games as well. That was my last one.
Cool.
So how about we move on to Queer Game of the Week? And before you say your queer game, I just want to explain this topic to listeners, because I'm probably not going to do this every week, but what a queer game can vary, right? So I just want to go through like all the qualifications for what can make a queer game.
Right, yeah.
So it can be any of the following, or any combination of any of the following. It can be a game that features a queer character or multiple characters. It can feature queer themes like body swapping, the destigmatization of like of people unknown, like I mentioned earlier, queer coded villains, like in a Disney movie, for example. It can feature queer relationships. A queer game can be something that is developed by a queer person, a queer-led studio, or a queer person was part of making decisions that significantly impacted the story, gameplay, or visuals. And before I go any further with these are my definitions of a queer game. And this might vary for different people, but this is what will potentially get a queer game onto the show for me to talk about.
Right.
In general, this is what I've been using across the board for things. Another qualification is that a game that is not inherently queer but resonates very heavily with a queer audience,
right?
That has been adopted by the queer community or even just the guests themselves. So, like for example, for me, like I consider Pokemon Crystal to be a queer game, even though it really isn't. But it brings a lot of trans people gender euphoria because it was the first game ever to let a lot of female players and trans people, especially trans women specifically, to play as a girl in that game. Same with like Sonic games. I know Sonic games have a huge queer community. Pokemon in general has a huge queer fan base. So this option obviously has to be justified and probably elaborated on in most cases. The other thing is that it can be an online or multiplayer game that is very inclusive of the queer community. So I don't have a game example here, but the Pokemon TCG is very inclusive. Like there are rules in the TCG when you go to live events that say like you can't misgender trans players, you can't discriminate trans players, or you can't discriminate gay players, for example. So it could be like a game that is multiplayer based where the devs are very welcoming of the queer community, or it has again, it can be something that just has a big queer fan base. So anyway, that's my rambling, but those are the qualifications. So that it opens up to a lot of possibilities for queer games, because like there aren't as many as there are cishet games.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah, and it's exciting to have this little new thing at the end of the episode. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. All right. Well, what's your queer game of the week? What's your recommendation to our listeners?
Yeah. So I am going to recommend a game called Tacoma. It's by the developer named Fulbright. They have also developed Gone Home. And to give, I played Tacoma towards the end of this past year, and I really enjoyed it. It's a sci-fi kind of adventure. So I'll give a quick summary. It's set aboard a high-tech space station in the year 2088, and you're exploring every detail of how the station's crew lived and worked, finding the clues that add up to a gripping story of trust, fear, and resolve in the face of disaster. The core mechanic of it is, you're someone who's been hired on to by a company to explore the space station and basically find out what happened to it. It's a little bit, if anyone else has played the game Obra Dinn, it's a little bit like Obra Dinn in that sense. And in that you're like investigating a case from the past. But you're investigating what happened on the space station, or on the space station, and the core gameplay mechanic is that you are finding these visual like hologram logs of the crew, and you can play through them and walk through them like physically, so you can find clues to determine like, okay, this is what this happened, like this is how this happened, this is why this happened, and a disaster has happened on the space station, and you're just trying to figure out what became of the crew, more or less. It's really good. It has some really cool queer characters, and just like really, really like wholesome like relationships in that sense. And a lot of really just like varied characters and people of like all different backgrounds, which is really cool. And little bonus for me, the character you do play, the person who's been hired to check out the ship, is named Amy. So yeah, really enjoyed it. It might be a bit of a shorter game. Like it probably took me about like 4 or 5 hours. So if you're just down to just like spend a little couple hours in an afternoon just playing a game, it's really good. It's very emotional, and it has, I will say, like in a world where there's a lot of queer stories that have a lot of tragedy in them, this does not, which is really nice. So there's like panic, and there's like, but like there's some really nice moments for especially for the queer characters in this game. So highly recommend. I hope y'all check it out.
Yeah, this sounds great. I think it's actually been on my wish list for a while, but I've been adding so many queer games as I've found them to my wish list. I think I forgot about it.
Fair. Yeah, it's a good one. I played Gone Home years ago. It was one of my first stream games, I think. And
that game is so good.
It's really good. And another one of those nice examples, like I mean, I won't spoil it, the ending obviously, but like another nice example of just like a good feeling queer story. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was Tacoma. It's made by Fulbright Games, and that is our first ever queer game of the week. So thank you for bringing that, Ekamy.
No problem.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining me this week.
Of course.
And for talking about Steam Next Fest.
And
that just about wraps up this week's show. Thanks, True Avatars, for joining me for another episode of your Queer Video Game Podcast. If you've made it this far into the episode, I really appreciate you taking the time to support queer-made content, which is a big deal. If you want to support the show, it would be really great if you could leave a rating, review, or comment on your preferred podcast platform. I welcome you to check out the website trueavatarspodcast.com, all one word. That's trueavatarspodcast.com. You can also find the show on Blue Sky, Threads, YouTube, under the handle @trueavatars, all one word, and on Instagram under trueavatars. Importantly, if you or anyone you know is queer and involved with video games in some way, please don't be shy. I would love to hear from more queer voices in video games. Your voice is unique and valid and worth sharing with the world. And if you don't want to be on the show or know anyone who's interested, but you know about a cool queer video game or a games industry story that's queer related, please let me know. The show's official email is trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. That's trueavatars.podcast@gmail.com. You can also feel free to reach out via the website or the aforementioned social media pages. Things are tough out there, and queer people need to stick together when we can. Bye, Azure Avatars. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you all again next week. Take care and stay safe.